see. I see. It sent me a "Are you sure" thing, and I didn't see it. Okay, so we're live. All right. I want to welcome everyone to Asbury Radio, the podcast voice of Asbury Park. When we were on the radio, we were always saying, "Welcome to Asbury Radio, the radio voice of Asbury Park," because it was so important that people knew that this was not about me or any of my guests in particular, but it was the people of Asbury Park we were providing a voice to. And that's what we're doing in a continuing fashion here on the internet. So I want to welcome today our guest, Kayla Canne, to Asbury Radio, the podcast. Like so many stories that become the too often used breaking news today story, the housing funding scam in Asbury Park seems to have happened over many years and right under our noses. Why now? What initiated this story? What brought Kayla Canne to Asbury Park? Um, and when? So welcome to the show. And what brought you here? And thank you for doing this.
Yeah, of course. So I'll just give you a little bit of background on me first. So I'm a reporter with the Asbury Park Press. I'm here on sort of a fellowship with an organization called Report for America. It's an initiative of the Ground Truth Project, which is a journalism nonprofit that is just seeking to create like more sustainable efforts in local journalism covering underrepresented communities, underrepresented topics. So that's what brought me here. Asbury Park Press really wanted to do a strong focus on affordable housing. So I've been covering affordable housing for the past year. And yeah, one of my most recent stories was investigating a rehabilitation program in Asbury Park. And we found out that while the city was spending money to rehabilitate, apartments for low-income tenants, landlords were oftentimes taking that money, rehabilitating their homes, and then not renting to the people that they were supposed to. So the money didn't actually go to benefit the community that it intended. Did you have another question in that?
In most cases, it actually benefited the landlords themselves in a big way. So we'll get to those details. I just wanted to interject here the Jules Plangere Jr. Family Fund, because I was just reading a little description.
Yes.
Of course, Jules was a publisher there at the Asbury Park Press, who died at the age of 95 in September 2016. And ironically, the primary mission of the Jules Plangere Jr. Family Foundation is to support local charitable organizations that feed hungry children and families, and to support charitable organizations and to fund educational institutions and medical research. But wasn't that sympathetic of him? Because of course, when people do lose their housing, they tend to go hungry, and lots of horrible things happen.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into
Yeah. So half of my time here is funded by the foundation, and we were really grateful for their support. They gave us a grant that pays my salary and allows me to be here. So
yeah, I was going to ask you if there is if you could express it as a percentage, if you would like.
Yeah.
Of how important the grant was, because investigative reporting is so expensive, and that answers part of the question of how come never before. Why now?
Yep. Yeah. So how Report for America works is Report for America pays half of my salary, and then the newsroom is expected to find support for the other half. That's kind of the deal or the incentive of, Report for America has realized that local newsrooms are struggling, and they can't afford to pay reporters, especially to do longer term investigative projects. And so Report for America fronts half of the salary, and then we were lucky enough at APP to have a connection with the foundation because he was a former publisher here. So we reached out to them, and they came on board with the other half, right away, which was a relief and really helpful.
So what was the chronology of it? How did they locate you? Why you?
Yeah. So Report for America, each year they have an application process of they'll take applications from newsrooms who have an idea of a topic or a community that they want to cover better, but they have to explain why they don't have the resources to do it. And then on the back end, Report for America also looks for reporters. A lot of times it's people who have, between 1 and 5 years experience and want to try something new. So I had applied on the reporter end. Asbury Park Press had applied on the newsroom end, and then we kind of got matched up within that process.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, who is going to pick up for you on this? Obviously, this story has a lot of legs, and I'm sure a lot of the readers are hoping that it's pursued. Do you know what the paper's plans are, and who will be actually picking up from you?
Yeah, so it's very exciting. We have a new reporter here. His name is Charles Day, and he's covering Asbury Park and Neptune and diversity issues for the Asbury Park Press. He just came on, I think, about a month ago, and he actually came out with me to, there was a city council meeting after the story ran. He came out with me to just, kind of see what was the reaction from the piece. But I expect that he'll be the one kind of taking charge after I head out. My fellowship ends next week, so this was my last big hurrah. And
you'll be heading back to Rochester. Yeah. So are they giving you a party? That's not in my notes, but
no. Well, pandemic. So.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, would you please give Charles Day? And I did actually meet Charles in the lobby of City Hall, first meeting after the story ran, and wished him well. So I would like to give him the message that he should post a comment on here if he wants people to get in touch with him and kind of introduction. And feel free to come on and we'll do a podcast of where he's been and what his plans are.
Sure.
So I wanted to know what surprised you most about your findings.
Yeah, that's a tough question for me.
I do have other questions if you want to think about that. It's I imagine that like any statewide story, there's a lot of tentacles. I'm very interested in how you were able to do this. Your team, so that it didn't get away from you, that it didn't become too big, that it didn't get swallowed up in maybe inside baseball, as we like to say these days, something like that. How did that work? Physically work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, there were 136 rental units that were rehabilitated under this program. I only talked about 3 of them. I looked into more than 3, but it came down to so kind of how I approached the story was I had a list of all of the units that were rehabilitated, but that doesn't mean I had information about what happened to them post rehabilitation, and that information is kind of hard to access. There isn't really there's no place where you can go to find how much a landlord is renting their apartment for, or who they're renting it to. Even we don't really keep records on that. And so the crux of my story was trying to figure out whether these apartments were renting to low income tenants at affordable rates. So without rental data, that's kind of hard to prove. So I went through.
While you're on that topic, though, to interrupt, Asbury Radio had looked into that. We were looking at specifically how the city figures out how much tax the property owners should be charged for their buildings, and of course, part of you can talk about the rent control issue and the information that the rent control law is asking the property owners to supply to the city on a regular basis. Because when I talked to I guess it was the assessor who works with the collector, he said it really was a very, serious issue because they could put down anything they wanted, the owners, and the city pretty much had to go along with it. They would go out and eyeball the units, and then sometimes get into a negotiation with those landlords.
Sure.
But this time around with the rent control, you might want to explain it. Have you talked to the city about that aspect?
Not so much. I know like the bare basics of it, in that, the city passed a rent control ordinance. They are now trying to get landlords. I don't remember if it's for 3 or 5 units. Landlords who have more than 3 or 5 units have to register, what their rent is, so that next year when they try to raise it, the city can tell whether or not they're following the percentage increase that they're limited to. But for my story, we didn't have any of that data because the city doesn't track rent for individual homes or for any of these properties. And so a lot of the time it was just me going on Zillow, seeing if I could find old listings. I went to a couple properties to try to talk to tenants. And I narrowed it down to the 3 that we had the best data on and that I could, confirm that this happened to. But I guess a limitation in my reporting was that I wasn't able to get to everything because you never are. And so there could be, more units out there that fall into this category. There could be more tenants out there that we don't know about that have been displaced or overcharged. And then also, in reporting, you can't include everything because the reader doesn't want that, and they're not
the attention span is limited.
Yeah. So it was important for us to. I narrowed it down to 3 examples that were a little bit different. There was one apartment who the landlord had, flipped it into a summer rental, an Airbnb. There was another example of a woman and her family who were displaced after their landlord increased the rent. And then I had a third example of a landlord who received money from the city, but the renovations were never complete. And so the house is actually abandoned. A couple of years later, it's still just, sitting there unused. And that money was never.
Odd one, that third.
Never taken back. And so, by giving these 3 different examples, I felt like I created the case that, something has happened here and it's happened more than once. So that should be enough to, compel city officials and maybe state officials to look into it.
And we haven't mentioned the numbers, I guess, on I don't think.
Sure.
On the amount of money that is estimated as having been squandered, that's owed to the program, right?
Yeah. So the city spent a little over $2 million, $2.27 million on 136 rental units. So they spent that money to rehabilitate units. And the whole idea of the program was after a landlord takes that money for a major repair on their house, a roof, a plumbing issue, an electrical issue, then they have to rent to a low-income tenant at an affordable rate for 10 years. So it's all about creating affordable housing by using existing structures.
Yeah, and that's a great little capsule of how it's supposed to work when everything goes right.
Sure.
And I want to talk to you about what the city's reaction has been. I just noticed that Lanece Ferguson, a tenant who was the star of your piece, she was the only tenant who was actually on the record on the piece, right?
Yes. Yeah. So part of that was, I first program because there was a housing advocate. His name is Tracy Rogers. He's with the Asbury Park Affordable Housing Coalition. He had been looking into this program for the past couple of years when he came across Lanece Ferguson, who was a tenant who was displaced from the program. She was renting a house with her family, helped her landlord get this grant, and then he continually raised the rent on her above the affordable housing limits until she could no longer afford it and she had to move out.
He could get that kind of rent because of the tax money in the form of the RCA money had improved his property.
Sure. Yeah. And so, like I mentioned before, so part of the struggle was without records at the city level, monitoring this and monitoring who was in those properties, and then after they left, who came in. It was hard to tell. It was hard to find the people for this. So that was one of the biggest issues. Is we had. I was able to connect with Lanece because she had reached out to Tracy and asked for help. And
that's how she came in.
Yeah,
of course, Tracy Rogers with the Affordable Housing Coalition. And I forgot that I have to do a little disclosure of my own here because I have been a member of the coalition. And because I'm a journalist, I have certain limits on the types of advocacy I can take on. So I was careful, not to violate that, stay within my my purview there. But I was able to observe what was going on. I kept their confidence when they were asked. If it was off the record, it was off the record. So a great deal of this I knew something big was coming down. I didn't know all of the details in any respect. But I do have a bias when it comes to the situation because I still can see how the leadership didn't know.
Sure.
I'm wondering too, from the state level, these are a lot of funds, and of course, there's a question about the rest of the state, right? There's an estimate. Now, was that from Fair Share, the Fair Share Housing Center?
No, so this kind of goes back. It goes back about 30 or 40 years. The state used to have a program that was called Regional Contribution Agreements, and essentially it allowed one.
That's where the RCA comes in.
Yes, it allowed one town to pay another town to, administer part of its affordable housing obligation. So a town, in this case, towns like Middletown and Howell, paid Asbury Park to either build or rehabilitate housing that Middletown would then get credit for. And so that's where the funding came from. But it was part of the statewide initiative. And statewide, this program, I think it was close to $210 million in contracts across the state that were supposed to fund 10,000 units of affordable housing. I only looked at Asbury Park, so I can't say, what happened in the other towns. But it definitely, it begs the question of if this could happen in Asbury Park, where is the monitoring to make sure that it didn't happen somewhere else?
Because the monitors were out of the Department of Community Affairs. That's the same department.
Sure.
That controls the entire state. That program. So one would question whether they had a better monitor system somewhere else than they did in Asbury Park. Probably not. But what kind of reaction did you get when you were they forthcoming, the DCA and the state officials?
Yeah. So the state.
Sheila Oliver, right, is the DCA head.
Yes. Yeah. In terms of monitoring of this program, the state doesn't really do that anymore. There used to be the Council on Affordable Housing, but that was disbanded a number of years ago, due to neglect and defunding. And so now monitoring of these programs and of affordable housing is kind of left to the local level. So that was another issue that I ran up in my reporting, was when I would go to the state and ask, who is monitoring this? How are you monitoring it? They aren't. And so they kind of told me it's left to the local level. And, obviously in Asbury Park, we saw that they weren't monitoring it correctly or weren't enforcing or administering the program correctly. And then, I went back to the state after the story ran to see if there was any interest in, if they wanted to do a statewide investigation on this. And I haven't been able to connect with any members of the Murphy administration.
And in your stories, you by the way, we should say when they ran, if you have the dates they ran and how many of them. But you have information in there about their responses on the state level. And
Sure.
they were basically no comment, right? They didn't have anything to say. But I'm wondering, to be devil's advocate for a moment about the locals, the local leadership that this job of monitoring was pretty much thrown in their laps.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They certainly didn't make it public, did they? That they were, gifted this responsibility without the means to do it. I mean, if we were in a situation where we had $2 million under our stewardship, and we didn't have the means to manage it, wouldn't we do something about it?
Well, so I'm not sure that is necessarily accurate. So the money that came into this program is about it precedes this administration by a couple of decades. It's about 30 years old. I think it came in the 1980s, and so this program has been running since then. So it's about 30 years of.
So the 2.72, I think, was million.
Yeah.
Is a cumulative amount going back that far. But of course, the cases that you brought out were within the last, from 2013 on?
Yeah, they were within the last 10 years of
10
about.
years.
Yeah, but so this program, it didn't start under the current Asbury Park administration.
Oh, no. But
definitely predated that. And,
I'm not aware of it, though, right? I mean, you talked to the city manager, right?
I wasn't able to. So right now the city, they told me that they're committed to looking into this. I believe that the program has been, paused or halted while they're looking into it. And they're working with Fair Share to try to figure out, Fair Share Housing Center, to try to figure out that they're aware of the problem. I'm not necessarily sure if they know when it began or if it goes back 30 years or if it goes back 15 or 10 or 5.
Is that really relevant? I mean, it's, there's these loans that were made, 41,000, and you've pinpointed the numbers very well.
Yeah.
Was there one for more than a contract? They call them contracts, right? With the landowners. Was there another one more than 40,000? I think something.
I don't know it off the top of my head, but most of them were. It's an average of 15 to 20 grand per unit. So if your building has more than one unit, you could get up to.
Oh, that's why the fellow got over 40,000?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then was that the one that Lanece was living in, or was that a different one?
That was a different one. That was a different one. I believe Lanece's landlord, I believe he got definitely less than $20,000 because he had the one unit. He did have other homes that he received money for. I couldn't confirm.
What about the one that got so many people's attention when they read that they were able to charge, the owner was able to charge $20,000 a month?
Yeah.
Rent on that unit.
Yeah.
What-
So there was one landlord who took this money. He rehabilitated 2 units of affordable housing. I think that one was about $40,000 that he received from the city, and then within a year or two, he started renting it on Airbnb as a luxury summer rental instead of renting it to a low income tenant.
People who attended, right, to
Yeah.
receive the benefit.
Yeah, and so I checked on Airbnb and other rental sites, and he rents it currently for about 20 grand a month, or at least that's what it's listed as.
This was how you found out. This is how you got the award, I should say. We haven't even mentioned your award, which you're a prize-winning journalist. Well, you were a prize-winning journalist before, I'm sure, but you are the second journalist in consecutive years, right, to win. I'm sorry. I have it in some. I have it in another form. But it was the. Oh boy.
I can help you out. I haven't won anything for this yet. Yeah. I don't want to get into the weeds, but award cycles usually they're usually around like January, and so this one missed. It's all work that was published in 2021. This one was obviously in 2022. But yes, I won. Recently, I won an award from the Deadline Club, which is a New York City journalism foundation or association. And that one was for my reporting on Section 8 discrimination in New Jersey.
Oh, great. Yeah, we're going to, we have a question already from the audience about Section 8. So
okay.
we should go to that question soon. I'm just waiting for Lanece to join us soon, probably in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Is she ready? But I oh gosh, I was going somewhere with this. I guess it's the okay, the real estate business in Asbury Park, just to give people outside the area an understanding, is everyone's a real estate. Everyone's got a license in Asbury Park. I mean, a little bit of an exaggeration, but mostly true. I mean, the guy who mowed the lawn in the front of our complex, I lived on D-Lake Court, had a license, real estate license. I mean, there are people who never used the real estate license who had one. And all the talk was about these outrageous amounts of rent people could get for their homes and how the real estate market was just out of this world. Did you find over the course of your reporting that there should have been more of a general knowledge of someone getting $20,000 a month, and that somebody would tell somebody that guy got the money from RCA? Was there any of that feeling? Because Asbury Park is kind of like a small town, really. It's only 1 square mile.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a tough question because the issue here and how this was able to happen was the state under state law. When you have a program like this, there's certain monitoring requirements that you're supposed to do each year to make sure that apartment that received that funding is renting to a low income tenant, is renting at an affordable rate. And if the landlord changes the tenant, you're supposed to know who they are and do certain checks to make sure that everything is in line for your 10-year obligation. None of that was done. And so I can't say,
And the deeds weren't restricted either.
Yeah, and the deeds, the proper paperwork wasn't filed. And so I can't say that anyone at the city knew that this landlord was renting on Airbnb because there was no monitoring of it. And so, this landlord benefited from a system of just, slack monitoring. And, he kind of flew under the radar. I can't really say if anyone else in town knew. I'm not sure that they knew he even got rehabilitation funding. That information isn't. I mean, it's public information. You can request it from the city, but it's not, posted just like freely online. You know what I mean? And so,
I'm sorry. Did you say you don't know that he got rehabilitation funding? The landlord that's getting the 20,000 a month.
no, I do, but
Oh,
but just like his neighbors or friends might not know that. It's unless you were specifically looking for that information, you wouldn't know it.
yeah, yeah. No, it's really an interesting situation how things like this can get around. I am going to. I don't see a Lanece in my. Well, I have to add to stream, right? Um, Lanece had to drop her children off. She had some family biz to take care of, but she will be coming on. And what what reactions are you seeing? I'm going to be asking Lanece this too. What reactions have you seen to the story? Are a lot of people reading it as a problem? Of, I was at the hairdresser the other day. I said, "What do you think of Roe Wade? I mean, we're going to lose."
Yeah.
The abortion is out, and she kind of, the gal who was working on me, kind of gave me this stare. She said, I don't read the news."
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so here's a girl who looks very healthy. Could probably have lots of babies between now and you know menopause. Um, did you find any resistance like that to people saying they didn't see it, or
Um,
have people come up to you or called, or what kind of reactions are you seeing?
yeah, I think in any news situation that is kind of typical, unfortunately. I think that it's been a struggle to capture an audience for who quite honestly supports local journalism. But I did get a lot of reaction from readers who really had no connection to this other than they appreciated the investigative aspect of reporting,
And it's a
which is,
wonderful story. You
yeah,
did a beautiful
thank
job.
you. Thank you. Which is investigative pieces are harder for outlets to do nowadays because we're so constrained on resources. So I did get a number of those. But then I would say the biggest reaction was I think it was a week after the stories ran, there was a city council meeting, and I would say about 24 people came out and spoke up about gentrification in Asbury Park and affordability and their struggles to find housing and remain in the city where either they grew up or they moved and fell in love with. And that was a big part of it was they might not have, I guess, directly benefited from this program, but they could see how it was playing into the larger problem of decreased affordability in Asbury Park and gentrification that is pushing out a community that has lived there for decades.
Yeah, yeah. And what about taxpayers? Did you hear? It's taxpayer money, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so that kind of goes to a lot of the emails and phone calls that I
Oh,
got.
really?
Mhm.
Good, good. And by the way, if anyone's interested, they can see those comments on the recorded version of the council meeting. Um, I'll, Lanece, we're waiting for you. I saw you just pop your head in. Let me see. I unmuted
I've
you.
actually been here for a good
I've been mentioning that you're about to join us, and I can
yeah,
see
I
you.
wasn't sure how it actually was, like if you were just was gonna introduce me and I was just waiting for my
Yeah,
moment.
yeah,
But
but yeah, I don't want to leave you hanging, and I feel like I've squeezed poor Kayla dry here. Just,
Oh, you're
and I
fine.
have tons more of
oh sorry, I've been hanging here for about 15 minutes. I'm listening in.
Okay. Well, I do have an intro for you. So the questions. Let's see. Was born at Lanece Ferguson.
Yeah.
Welcome. Was born in Neptune and lived her adult life so far. She's 40, just a kid, um, in Asbury Park. So she's kind of like a native of Asbury Park. Neptune is only, the next town over. Um, she was employed as a certified medical assistant for a local pediatrician's practice, and is a single mother of three. In 2013, she wasn't making big money, but she had managed to have some small savings. Um, Lanece, would you like now to? What happened to you? Did I lose you again? Where'd your face
No,
go?
you did not. You did not lose me. So
Okay.
that's basically it. That's how everything started in the beginning.
Yeah,
You
that
know
was what it was
that was
like in 2013, just before the new landlord took over. And what was your address? I misplaced the address.
at the time I was living at 1508 Springwood Avenue.
Okay.
That's in Asbury Park, and things were just progressing. I was on a forward path. I knew where everything was going. The kids were set in school, and everything was sing song as far as everyday life goes. And one day, my landlord just asked me to go down to the city and give them verification of my income so that he can get grant money to do repairs to the home, because he wanted to make the house, it's up to par. He played as if he was gonna leave us there, and he told me that he just wanted to make the place nice for us. He enjoyed my family, and we had a really good relationship, honestly.
Oh, so you
So
had no idea that this was about to all crash through.
no, it was like the rug being pulled right from under my feet, like literally, and I
Yeah.
hit hard.
So
I
tell
hit
me,
hard. It truly
yeah.
affected me in every aspect of working and social standing
Well,
in
yeah,
each and every way.
and we haven't
In
told the
every way.
audience yet about how that happened, how you lost the stature and everything, and became a officially evicted person when you were never evicted.
Right. So my landlord, he got the grant money. The work was done, completed, and shortly after it was completed, he told me that he was going to need to raise the rent because he had done repairs to the place, and fair market value states that he should be getting more for the place. Never
Right.
once did he tell me that that this was a grant by the name of RCA, nor did he explain to me what the guidelines would be. So
Right.
I
And
was not
we could
informed.
repeat that. I want to know if you can put your camera on. Are you did you make a decision you don't want the camera
I did.
on?
I did.
Why?
I did.
Look at this.
Today's not my best hair day.
I look like a ghost. Get on here. Come on.
Oh, okay,
Look
guys. I
at me.
told you.
That's a
All right.
beautiful picture of you.
Here's the camera.
Now, while you're getting adjusted, look at you. You're beautiful. Um, Regional contribution agreements. We've referred to it a lot as RCA, but that's what it stands for. When the municipal courts ordered local governments to adopt plans to provide for affordable housing using millions of dollars in taxpayer money, the obligations quickly became contracts that allowed a muni to pay another one to administer part of its obligation, typically through the rehab of existing housing units. The monitoring of those contracts was left to those munis. So why would you have a background in that? Why would you have known about it? So he asked you to go to court
I,
for the reason and it turned out to be eviction court, right? But it was like what, tenant landlord court or something, so that he could
yeah, that's
pay his
that's
rent
how,
late.
that's what I was under the impression, that it was just a meeting in which we would come to terms on what the rent would be going forward,
Yeah,
since he was requesting the increase. And I didn't
because
agree
he
to
had
the
made these
increase.
improvements, right?
I didn't agree to the increase. Again, I was in the place before he took over, and there was minimal work done to the interior, and we've been there for a good time. And
Essentially, the
since
money
then,
was,
it's not like he didn't receive increases with the cost of living. When it went up, he received his increases then. When it all hit the fan was when he went from $11.50 to $15.50, and we settled at $15.50, and then it went further and it went further, and he kept raising the rent. So I had to agree to vacate my home because I could not afford.
Because the court decided that it was fair rent for what he was offering. Right?
He was entitled to fair market value and he could ask for the rent that fair market value.
So did the court understand that he had gotten money?
The court didn't even understand what the money program was about. They were like unsure of what that was about. They had no idea what the RCA program was. So when it was being mentioned, it was looked over. Like it was just a word that was being thrown out there and looked over. They had no idea that it meant that he used the money to make the improvements that he claimed to have made.
Improvements were with the roof and the siding, which doesn't affect you inside, right?
There were some windows done.
Yeah.
That made it a little warmer.
It's not cosmetic, right?
Yeah.
So when did you find out that you were on the eviction list?
After I got into a new apartment, I by chance came across a guy who was willing to rent to me, because it was really hard anyway to find another place, considering the rents were going up outside of me being in my home. Rents were going up, and it was kind of impossible to find a place before I was homeless at the time.
And what year was this? Because it started in 2013, but this was later, right? With around 16.
Yeah, it hit the head in the year 2019. 2019.
Yeah. So if anybody was trying to get a summer place, or even for a couple of weeks in Asbury Park in 2019, I mean, I ran into it in 2021. Paying $1,000 a week for a motel because I couldn't find a place that would take my proceeds from the sale of my home as proof that I could pay rent.
Furthermore, we went on a lockdown because of COVID.
Oh, right, that too.
Yeah, so landlords weren't even seeing people. Like, you couldn't go view a place, and everything kind of shut down. So that contributed to a lot of the stresses of what happened also.
And you ended up paying $1,000 a week in a motel.
That is true.
For you and the 3 children.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the mental anguish these kids had to go through being in one room together? One room.
Oh my God.
Room. They're not even like the same age category. Like they're all so different. Like my daughter, she's now 20. My son, he's 17 years old. And then I have an 8-year-old. So they're very different people, and they absolutely needed space. So they weren't dealing with it real well at all. And I'm still looking into someone for my daughter and son to talk to, because they seem to be affected more than I can help with. Like it's a little different.
Well, I mean, there's statistics everywhere just about the influence of the pandemic on children, and how disturbing, and how many children came away with these issues. You had said nobody called you from City Hall, not even after this series of Kayla's.
Not a letter, not a phone call. No one contacted me.
No one contacted you.
Besides Kayla and Tracy Rogers. I'm sorry,
I didn't mean to talk over you. What was that?
I said the only 2 people I heard from was Kayla and Tracy Rogers.
Wow. And you said that it's a sickening feeling in your stomach. You actually feel it physically.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, another irony.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Like, and there's no relief for it, because there's no resolve. It's open. It's an open.
Well, your rent has been raised where you are, right?
It has recently.
This is the irony. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm wearing that word out, but it'll kill you. But you are only steps away now from City Hall, where you are living.
I
It's
just
actually
looked
just
at City
across
Hall.
the street.
It's literally across the street. Literally, like
And I've seen.
walking
I
distance.
just mentioned this to someone. I've seen a lot of reaction shots and little clips of Eileen Chapman and two women, Yvonne. Why am I drawing a blank on Yvonne's last name? It's nothing personal, Yvonne, but the council women, and showing that they were really disturbed and upset. So I'm really shocked. I mean, they have coffee with a council person. They advertise. We want to hear from you, and no call. Okay, well, that's my editorializing here. But let's see, what else did I want to get to? So just for the record's sake here, you had been at that address, the 2013 place, 1508 Springwood Avenue, for how long before this new landlord came in and turned your life
Well,
up?
I began renting at 1508 Springwood Avenue in 2010.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you've been there, what, 3 years when he came in?
Before he came in, yeah.
And your job you had been at for what, 2 years prior to that?
Right. That's right.
Yeah. And I don't know if we made it clear that, the chaos that you were thrown into. Well, as soon as that judge made that decision, you had 30 days to get out, wasn't that the time?
From that point it was 30 days notice to vacate.
How do you move 3 kids? I mean, you're moving, Kayla. Can you relate to this? With no children yet, I think. I don't know.
No children.
But I mean, that alone, the 30 days is enough to put you in a loony bin. Sorry, it's probably wrong.
Seriously, we found ways to cope, but yeah, those are stories.
I mean, you're all together. That's amazing, right there. Kayla, we were going to come back to the discussion of Section 8,
Sure.
and I have Lola Davis. I don't. Can you see? Show. Can you see this? Well, this is actually my acknowledging Lola Davis's comment, which is not the same as having Lola Davis's comment. I don't know why that didn't work, but this is our first time doing it on this new system. So where'd you go, Lanece?
Oh no, I'm here still.
Come on back.
Come back. Picture.
Yeah, because Kayla's gonna talk to us about Section 8 in a minute. She won an award for her story on Section 8. What area was that you did your reporting on?
So it's a statewide issue. So Section 8 is protected. It's a protected class in New Jersey. Theoretically, a landlord cannot deny you housing simply because you have a Section 8 housing voucher. So if a tenant were to ask a landlord, do you accept Section 8, and that landlord tells you no, they're discriminating against you, and it's against the law.
I've actually had that happen to me before.
Yes,
I've actually had that happen to me before.
Yeah,
I've talked about in one of the local areas in Neptune, and the landlord flat out told me, he said, we never dealt with Section 8. We never, we just don't take it. We don't deal with that. And that's exactly how he put it to me. And the phone went click.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So my series looked at how, even though this is illegal in New Jersey, the state doesn't really do much to enforce that law. So there's two kind of aspects there. Is they don't proactively enforce it. There's something called discrimination testing. It's used a lot in racial discrimination, where an investigator will go out and maybe they'll send a white family to check to try to rent a house and see what the landlord's reaction is. And then they might send a Black or a Latino family out and see if they get treated any differently. You can do the same thing with Section 8. You could send an investigator who pretends to have a Section 8 housing voucher, tries to rent an apartment, and see whether they get told flat out no, or maybe if they get, this apartment is no longer available. But then if you have someone else try to call without a Section 8 voucher to see how they're being treated differently. So the state doesn't do any of that testing. And then on the other end, they have a portal where they field complaints from people, but we found that the complaint process takes forever. There were some cases that had lasted years. I've been following one case from a woman who had a 6-minute phone recording of a landlord discriminating against her. Just, probably the best evidence that you could have. And it's been, this happened in August, so it's been about 10 months. And she's still waiting for her case to be resolved. So there's no immediate action for people who are facing discrimination in a really tight rental market where, a housing voucher doesn't even really go that far in terms of the amount that you would get. And so it's making
that's what Lola was bringing up, that you don't get as much money because the rents are so high.
Right. So Section 8 was created as like this opportunity for, instead of, relegating people into public housing communities, you give someone a voucher, you give them a chance to access housing theoretically in any neighborhood, better schools, better jobs, closer to family. But, we found that it's been a barrier, and that, the state isn't really doing anything to remove that barrier. They're not being proactive on it.
Is this your experience too, Lanece?
Right.
Did I lose you?
Yes.
Everyone?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Was this your experience too, similar to what Lanece is talking about? Sorry, what Kay was talking about?
Kayla. Yes, absolutely. This has been the experience with the program. Yes, it's like a known thing. Like, you kind of know that you're going to run into this ahead of time. They do inform you that some landlords may not accept. They're aware of it.
Do they tell you it's illegal? What's that?
No.
They don't tell you.
I have not told them it. No.
Well, what are we going to do? I mean, it seems.
Well, no,
like
there's a right. They do tell you that it's illegal for them to discriminate, but they find other ways to discriminate without, to get around it. So, for instance, we say like they'll use your credit and use the credit to say, oh, well, once they find out that you have the Section 8 voucher, they'll try it and use the credit check to say, oh, well, your credit isn't 8.0 and we only written to people 8.0. They'll find some other reason, or your income, that they'll use your income, like you got to make a certain amount of income to rent. Like you have to make, say, $35,000 a year or more in order to rent there.
Isn't that what Section 8 is? And don't they give you the money for the rent?
They don't care basically where the rent goes. I
thought sometimes
they know that Section 8 is going to give you the money, but from what I understand from the landlords is they rather not deal with it. That's basically what they say.
So I guess
they
they're
just
not getting called into tenant landlord court.
They'll give you a lot of other excuses, but they won't say exactly it's because you have Section 8. Most of them won't. I've had that one incident where they told me that they do not deal with Section 8 and that's just it, and hung the phone up.
So, Kayla, what would you suggest the state do? I mean,
so there's a group in New York City that's trying really hard to fight this right now. I think it's called Housing Rights Initiative. And last year they sued pretty big real estate companies and landlords in New York City for this type of discrimination. They did the undercover investigations that I was telling you about, the testing. And I think they found that in like 50% of their phone calls to landlords
Really?
like came back with evidence of discrimination. So they went ahead and sued these companies. And I think that they got some pretty big commitments. I forget the specifics, but of companies changing their policies or implementing more training, offering like settlement money to go back into more resources to fight discrimination. So, a law is great, but without enforcement of the law, it's a moot point, right?
Yes.
If you think about
So if they can do
about
it
any
without
law,
enforcement.
yeah, any law that we have, if there's no real fear of getting caught or no consequence, then there's no incentive to follow the law. So
Well, I've got both of you here. Lanece being a very brave, courageous tenant, coming out of the weeds to say this is what's going on, and you are so dependent on that cooperation from those tenants. Lanece, what would you tell other tenants about coming forward? Would you encourage them to do it? Are you the poster child for don't do it? What is it?
No, if you can find the courage to do it, find it, somehow that you feel as though this is something that you feel strongly about, I very much so encourage you to speak on it. Because me, myself, I'm normally a very quiet, introverted person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just to the point now where I feel as though like I'd just rather for it to be known, the situation here in Asbury Park, for it to be capped off and for someone to start doing something about it, because we've already lost 39% or more of our native population here due to what is going on. And it's not just me, it's everyone. There was a period last year where I just saw everyone's furniture on the curbs just thrown out. Like everything was just totally thrown out. And I'm like, oh, everyone's moving. But come to find out, when it trickled down, it happened to me also. I know the story now. I'm part of that story. And I think everybody should tell exactly what's going on, because this is a setback. This is a setback for everyone who is being trampled on, and it's a major setback for us families. We're already in a position where we're with low income, and for others to just take monies that's designated to improve the situation of low income families and profit off of it, and then leave them with no resolve, no homes, the families are getting torn apart, separated, or either crammed into too many places. Like, I think everybody should speak up on it, because as long as it's hidden, they're going to continue to do it. And also, since the story broke, they're still like pushing it under the rug. Like you said, they have not contacted me. No one apologized for the fact of the matter that this caused me and my family so much strife. You have city officials who live directly across the street from me. My number is posted. I'm posted. You can find me. I mean, you gave me nothing. And we look to you to take care of the citizens. You're in the position to make sure that this city is right for everyone who lives here. Not only the people who are coming in with the millions of dollars and running their Airbnbs, it's the people who've been here, who've struggled, who've watched this city come from, it looks like a third world country. You go back some years and watch it build up. And not only that, those people put back work into building it up also, but it's unfair of them to just displace them, cost them money, cost them mental anguish. And honestly, I'm so disgusted that I want to put it behind me, you know? Huh?
Right. I mean,
I want to put it behind me. It's stressful.
You put yourself through training to get a good job. You were moving forward, and boom, it can all just fall apart. And
just fall apart. And it can happen to anyone, and it has happened to a lot of others, you know?
Yes. And a lot of people who are brown or black.
But if me coming forward will kind of make it better for others to come.
I think
you
so.
know, and make sure that we have a better change, a different. I just hope it gets a little better and someone works this issue out. They need to work this issue out so they can also put it behind them.
Well, I did propose, and we're right out of time. I did propose that they make it an agenda item on the council where every 2 weeks they have to report to the community in public, not in these private executive sessions that they're doing now with their lawyers. That they're actually telling us, where they are in improving the monitoring and how they're going to reorganize things. And I think we're getting thrown off. But is that
Right, even that.
is that on your radio?
Lay out a plan of reorganization. Like, you're kind of breaking up. I can't really hear
I think there might be a delay.
We have to end this, but thank you so much, Kayla. Much love to you so much, New York. It's already Bill's Rochester or his family's. Okay, and Renee, don't you go away anywhere.
Thank you both for taking interest in this story.
Well, I'm going to say interested. Please stay in touch. Okay?
Don't go away.
Don't go away. Do not go away. Okay. Thank you so much for today. I appreciate it. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
The red button. Okay. So I think we're off. Here's my engineer. Are we off?
No, we're not.
Oh. Okay.
Button in the upper right-hand corner.
Yeah, I did that already.